Good morning, everybody. So I actually was in New York last week and tried Amazon Prime Now to get a Fitbit, and I'm wearing a Fitbit and a watch. Is that bad? Is that really geeky? Anyway, I'm a geek, and so I was amazed by this innovation of being able to buy within an hour. $7.99 delivery charge, $16 tip. You have to pay a $16 tip, suggested tip. So I'm a bad person if I don't pay the $16 tip. That's a lot of money for a delivery. 16 plus 8, 24, right? Yes? And so, that's a lot of money. So anyway, I think we'll see how this evolves, but it was pretty powerful. It literally arrived in a brown bag within about 50 minutes. So I was pretty blown away by that. So what does this mean for us? Like, what does the future customer actually mean for our businesses? So really, what the future customer is all about is understanding how we can grow our businesses. So what does it take to achieve growth? And there are companies out there who aren't really interested in growth. They're interested in kind of just doing the same thing. But as this sort of comical story here implies, that not doing anything will probably lead you into a sort of a slow decline into nothingness. The customer is changing so much now, we don't really have a choice. We're like sharks. We can't stand still. We have to keep moving with the customer. And so looking at what trends we're seeing in the future customer, we've tried to break this down into a couple of areas to really sort of understand where this customer is going. First of all, it's the baby boomers, this post-demographic consumerism. We're seeing actually the fastest growing, wealthiest consumer now are the silver surfers. And take for instance here, last year Twitter, fastest growing demographic was between the ages of 54 and 66, growing at almost 80%, way faster than any other demographic on Twitter. Now, what's interesting about this is that these consumers have a lot of wealth. They have a lot of money. Now, when you're trying to sell to the 18 to 22-year-olds, for instance, they don't have a great deal of cash, especially now with the sort of challenges of getting a job in the sort of the post-crisis age. So really, how are you marketing to this demographic? Because these are the ones with the most dispensable amount of cash, and they're finally learning how to do e-commerce. So big opportunity here. Customers also are deciding the agenda. They're the ones where, I take for instance Black Friday, a very popular shopping in the US, a concept that kind of really became a big deal in the US. Now it's a very big deal here. This was very consumer driven. Consumers pushed for this, and now it's the biggest single shopping day. So bigger than just before Christmas, bigger than Boxing Day. This is the biggest single shopping day of the year. And so getting everything right for this behavior is critical. I mean, the press was littered with stories about sites going down because of the overload on the systems for this day. So that's a huge amount of lost revenue, poor experience, and the fact is your consumers are demanding this now, so you must answer to the fact that this year your biggest shopping day is likely to be Black Friday again. And I think the other major trend we've talked about for a number of years is that consumers are no longer consumers anymore. They're not just literally consuming your products and your information. They're writing reviews, they're making decisions about your brand, they're advocating your brand, and they're potentially negatively promoting your brand. And so you have to treat your customer as a participant, because that's what they are today. You have to understand, in a participant culture, what are your customers doing? And I think one of the really big trends that we see is customer expectations are formed from a very small number of web properties that are used very regularly. So, we all use Apple, Google, Facebook, and our expectations are driven from these few platforms. And so when we go onto your websites, your customers on your websites, they're expecting similar experiences to what they get on those type of platforms. So it's really important to keep up with these trends. What is the latest widget or solution that's been added into one of these platforms that your customers will start to expect from your website? And really thinking about that from a mobile perspective as well. And I think that the brand agnostic customer today is very prevalent. You see this study recently by Havas that 73% of consumers wouldn't care if the brands they use today simply disappeared. And so, we're dealing with a very fickle customer base. They're not necessarily deeply attached to your business anymore, like they were 50 years ago. And so now what you have to understand is, how do I treat my customer like the king or queen every time they're on the site? Because that's exactly what they're gonna judge you on. And so this stat looks at that. 66% of customers switch brands or business due to poor customer service. And really, that's what we're getting at here, is the importance of good customer service, the importance of actually understanding what customer service is, and going beyond that and actually providing customer joy. So how then do we create a strategy to grow within this very tricky environment? So this is a person I look up to very regularly around where the industry is going. Clayton Christensen, he wrote a book, Innovator's Dilemma. He's written many books around what disrupts current businesses. Why do current businesses eventually, the leader eventually topples? What drove that change? And so one of the theories that Clayton Christensen has been developing is that customer experience is the next mega trend that's going to really potentially completely topple a lot of businesses. And the businesses that can adopt customer experience into the core of what they do are going to be the new winners. And so when you look at this trend, it's also extended out, in his theories, extended out to the fact that we will actually report, financial reporting of our companies will actually look at things like customer experience. So we won't just report profits and cash, we'll actually report on things like, what was our customer experience? What did we do to keep our customers happy? Because shareholders will demand that knowledge. They will want to know the company is actually generating good customer experience and reporting on that. And so really what's behind this is that there are these disruptive directions companies take, and they embed what seems like a relatively basic and simple feature to the majority of the market, but what happens over time is the majority of the market eventually want to adopt that simple feature, and that becomes the core feature. And so you look at many businesses that have followed this track. For instance, you take Uber, which I'll talk about in a minute, but Uber does, you can't book a car with Uber. A lot of people would book taxis, book a minicab. You can't do that. That's one of the core reasons of using a minicab. Uber don't even do that, but Uber focused on this concept of instant car, geolocation. They focused on one simple concept, which has enabled them to grow into a $40 billion company. And so the entire market comes around to that one concept. So this is a very disruptive approach to business, and customer experience is that primary tenet right within this change. Looking at how businesses organize themselves around this, you take IKEA, a business that has a bizarre approach to customer experience. But what they've done is they've built in a organizational change around the way their customer buys from them. So they're very successful around understanding that customers actually have jobs to do. And they don't think about the product they're going to buy, they think about the job they're going to do. So I need to fit my living room, I'm moving house, I need some cupboards, I'm moving in, I'm redoing my kitchen. People think in the jobs they're doing rather than I need to buy a sofa. And so IKEA provides a whole set of solutions for that job. So they're actually thinking exactly about what the customer's in need of a solution rather than just designing product. And so this is a very interesting concept because it goes against a lot of the traditional retail approaches of thinking about product first. And I think this is a study that came out from The Economist that really talks about how companies, it's more about how a company operates than what the company actually does. That's going to become more important over the next couple of years. And we have to actually reorganize the entire company structure around how you do operations. And you look at, there's another interesting retailer in the States, Zappos, which sells shoes. It's owned by Amazon. And they're actually completely removing any management layer from their business. They call it the holacracy. And that means that everything is organized around tasks for the customer. There is no need for a management structure because everything is organized around the customer and the success of the customer. So there's so literally they actually said to the managers, you have to find new jobs because we're no longer going to have management layer anymore. And they have a CEO and then it's completely flat. And so we're starting to see companies completely reorganize themselves around the customer and around this big trend that's happening right now in the market. So I'm going to play a quick video. I've kind of talked about the business operational side of this, but now what I'm going to look at is from the consumer perspective. What does this change actually look like for us buying products today? And this is an ad from a US retailer.
Look at them, time thieves. With their tiny little bandit hands, stealing a second, a minute, an entire day. That's where your time went. With these creatures, hungry, sleepy, poopy little crooks. But honestly, they wouldn't even have to steal it because you're happy to give it to them. Save what little time you have with store pickup from Target. Buy online, pick up in store, and spend more time with your little thieves.
And so the crux of that ad is talking about time. It's our most precious commodity, is our time. We don't want to spend time walking around stores anymore, aimlessly looking for products that are out of stock. We don't want to spend time on websites waiting for the page to load or waiting to find the product. We don't have enough time to do these things anymore. And that is the primary driver of this major shift into customer experience. So, really, this is what's so exciting. And now we're actually seeing businesses advertise this concept. So it's really going to the core now of what we're seeing as a major change of the consumer. So the new entrants in the space really get this. They really understand this. So I talked a little about Uber earlier. It's an incredibly disruptive industry. It's basically putting the value into the network. The network is the supply and demand, the car and the consumer. The internet has made that, the internet and the mobile phone and the GPS in the phone has meant that those things can all be connected together in real time. And so that is probably one of the most disruptive industry changes. Literally, it's taken 5 years to disrupt a gigantic market. And so these things will happen very, very, very fast, these disruptions. So we need to watch these things carefully about where this affects your businesses. Metro Bank, is the first high street bank in the UK, new high street bank in the UK in over 100 years. And so, what we're seeing here is that, a disruptive customer experience focused banking model, which is coming into the market, looking to copy the John Lewis model. And there are all these businesses look to retail, and this is a model that Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, drew out on a napkin about 12 years ago. And the focus of this model was around growth. How do we grow our business? It's actually a really good strategy for any business. But growth is all around the concept of selection. You need to have lots of relevant products. You need to create great customer experience, and customer experience is key. That drives traffic because people talk about the business. That drives sellers because you want to create a marketplace of sellers. That drives growth. That cycle drives growth. But because you have that cycle, because you're growing, you can lower your cost structures and you can lower prices. And so that is a very simple model that's built on a core principle of customer experience. And Amazon put this into their core model years ago, long time ago. And they're obsessed with it. Net promoter score, customer experience, delivery times, the way the website works. They've been obsessed with this concept. And the thing is that there is an opportunity to challenge them now because there is a big shift going on. They designed this model 15 to 20 years ago, and we're seeing the next wave of disruptive customer experience. So there's a big opportunity for every retailer to disrupt Amazon as happens in this cycle of disruption. So how to build the strategy around the customer. It's about the team. Everything starts with the team. It's all about the people. There is no technology that can solve your problem if you don't have the right team and the right operations in place. And so, it's about having an agile team driven for customer experience. It's about user experience design. It's about good marketing and strategy. It's about being agile through JavaScript and being able to change things quickly. As a web technology, it works very, very well. And it's about having that analyst, that data scientist as well. This type of unit working together, so it's not IT department versus marketing department, it's a single unit built around the customer, is what we see as businesses that are succeeding the most have. And it's a really, really key structure. And this is the key thing to have in place. You also have to have the right culture, and the culture of test and learn, the culture of it's okay to make mistakes, because being agile is about moving fast and fixing things quickly and not doing long release cycles that mean that you release something, the grand unveil, a year of work, and nobody likes it. You need to be much more agile, weekly release cycles, daily release cycles even in some cases. And so that's what we need to see. Thomas Edison, it took him 9,000 attempts to build the light, to create the light bulb. So, he worked many times, many failures to create what was, one of the biggest innovations of the last 100 years. And so this agility is critical. Shop Direct Group, last year they increased their testing and optimization velocity by 300%. This is a company that has organized themselves around velocity, around moving really quickly. The entire e-commerce group works around this approach of moving very quickly. And so that's what businesses need to be doing today to be taking customer experience seriously. And at the core of all of this is customer data. And if you don't know your customer, if you're trying to do changes to your site, and if you're trying to optimize your business, and you don't know who your customer is, what are you actually changing? What are you actually fixing? And so you need to put that customer data strategy right into the core of what you do. And this is something we see a lot of businesses really taking very seriously now. It's even board level of seriousness. But Farfetch is a great example of a business that builds themselves entirely around a very deep understanding of their customer data. From the journeys they take on the site to the issues with, to the marketing effectiveness, all the way through, they understand the customer and what they're doing and how to be an efficient business. So this is an opportunity for marketers to think big. I think what we have is a disruptive force going through the industry. A need to create customer joy, not just good customer experience. And that gives us a license to start thinking really big. And that's exciting, because if we can really start to generate our big ideas, then we get an opportunity to get ahead and stay ahead of our competitors. So we took a couple examples of what some of our customers are doing around thinking big and what they're trying to do to deliver great customer experiences. So you take, for instance, a company in the States that we work with, a t-shirt company, T-Turtle, and what they wanted to do is create a battle for the most popular t-shirt. What is on Black Friday? What was the most popular shirt? And it was essentially taking a real-time feed of customers coming onto the site, and it was looking at what was being looked at, what was being purchased, and it was showing a battle. And that actually drove sales, because that made people think, oh wow, that's the most popular shirt. I want to get that. And it created an interesting approach to recommending a product. And so what they wanted to do was move beyond algorithm product recommendations and try something much more powerful and much more fun and exciting. And this had a really great reaction. It's sort of an example of, again, thinking outside the black box. Take Indochino. It's a Canadian suit retailer. And what they're doing is thinking about how to actually, they are a suit tailors that are an e-commerce business, but they have this concept of the traveling tailor. And they wanted to use the platform to understand where to bring the traveling tailor to. So they used the data, they looked at the data to understand where their customers were, where they were buying, where they weren't buying, all across the US. And then they worked on creating a tool on the page that actually essentially asked the customer when and where they wanted the tailor. And that meant that tailor went to that area, and they were able to increase sales quite significantly as they got the customer to be able to look and feel at the product. And it was almost like a pop-up store on wheels, essentially. And Jimmy Choo in the US, so this is something that happened when there was the cold storms in the States, and Jimmy Choo wanted to respond quickly to the issues with delivery because New York was completely shut down by the cold weather. And what they did is they wanted to talk to their local customer in New York and say, look, there are severe weather storms, our service will be disrupted. And so we're able to push this message out just to people in New York very quickly. It's about agility and being able to move very quickly. And then, what we're starting to see is more and more where you're combining multiple data sets together. So you're bringing weather, you're bringing geolocation, you're bringing products, merchandise all together to provide a much better experience. So what's the weather going to be like tomorrow, and what products do we have to cater to the weather based on where you are. And so this is an example of something that Burton did, and they were actually able to increase conversions by about 12% by tailoring that message based on the weather to where the user was. So it's a new type of merchandising where you bring weather in. What we're seeing is weather has a really big impact on sales, on clothing sales. And then it's about being able to ingest even more complex and a wider variety of data. And something that Topman did was they wanted to run specific personalizations cross-device to people to students. And they wanted to understand the fact that they were a student, and they wanted to understand what they bought before, and they were able to bring all that data together to create a really targeted student offer just to who they knew were students. So they weren't talking about student stuff to any of their other customers who weren't students. So that was a really powerful targeting and using a data set that they already had within their business. The opportunity here for delivering big ideas to drive better customer experience, it's a way of staying ahead, but it's also a way of generating significantly more revenue. And this is a study that looked at the estimated ROI of businesses that focus on customer experience. And the increase in ROI is 36%.